Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our show, Ukraine, Russia, China. And I would like to introduce my special guest for today, international arbiter from Montreal, Canada, Vadim Tsipin. Welcome to the program, Vadim.
Hello, thanks, Sasha.
How are you doing today?
Fine, thank you. Glad to be on your show.
I really think that you should help me to really qualify the uh, how to make your opinion and for public at the same time about this war. Um, First of all, number one approach is to divide it in three parts. Number one is actual fights and battles on Ukrainian Russian lines of conflict, of direct conflict. Okay. Oh, Ivan, welcome to the program.
Hello.
That question will be applied to you as well. So, number one is actual skirmishes or battles. Now, second one is a public opinion war. And now it's already, you can separate two because from what a public, say, social media and other devices lead you to believe, you cannot really make up your opinion about what's really happening there and what information you get from social media and others about the what's happened in a real theater of war. So these two are very interconnected. And number three, of course, it's economic war. Now, economic war, it's more or less easier to really make some sense because there's a lot of hard data is available, and so therefore we can make some assessments of that. But this is all very complicated issues, and Vadim, maybe you'll take a look at how you view all these problems.
Thank you, Sasha. Let me start. And obviously, your experience and your business background is showing in how well you structured the question, how you analyzed and tried to um, show the different aspects of this issue. I would try to follow in your footsteps and comment on some of the things that you said. Obviously, every war waged by a state against another sovereign state is a huge, massive undertaking where uh, some estimates are made about the capacity of the aggressor and the capacity of its victim. So, going to this war, Russia obviously expected certain things from Ukraine and obviously expected certain things from its own military machine and the economy at whole. But as Sun Tzu taught us several millennia ago, one of the most dangerous things um, for a leader is to fall into a trap where he overestimates his own forces and neglects to give proper assessment to the force of the opponent. And the whole world have seen that Russian tactics and Russian strategy collapsed at the first meeting of the reality on the ground, because the attitude that Russian um, regime and its propaganda maintained toward the sovereign nation of Ukraine and its people for these 8 years was extremely condescending. They tried to mock or humiliate or tease both the nation, its military and political leadership, and its warriors. We all know this propaganda shots about people with supposedly wooden rifles trying to defend, trying to train, and there's so well, he loves best who laughs last. The heroic people, yesterday's office managers, or barbershop employees, or nurses, or teachers, took these rifles and trained and went into territorial defense and were able to stop the so-called second or third army in the world because they fought for their independence, because they had high morale and they trusted their leadership, and because they had initiative. This is a thing that I believe is often overlooked, Sasha, and I'd like to point it out to our leaders that the Russian Air Force inherited its model from the old times Prussia. Prussian model was established in the army of the Tsarist Russia by Tsars, and it's an exact following of the orders from above. No initiative is tolerated among non-commissioned officers or among privates in the Russian army. Whereas the Ukrainian army was able to rebuild itself in these 8 years under the model of the leading NATO armies, where human spirit and human initiative and human ingenuity play an important role. And I believe that Ukrainian national character also plays a very important role here, because these small detachments are able to lead uh, smart defense, let's say it's smart defense, and are able to formulate their goals without waiting for the whole chain of command to propagate. Whereas Russians are coming to this Chernobyivka air base for the 18th or the 19th time, and no one cares that the previous attempts failed just because someone from high above from Moscow said that. And it's not in the nature of a Russian commander to contradict the orders from above. And I think this would be one of the reasons why the army of the free people will always prevail over the army of slaves. And I will stop here and I will try to pass the baton to Ivan so that he can add something and share his opinion.
Great. I just want to add one more thing that strategy could lead not only to a smart defense, but also smart counterattack and smart attack on, including one on the Russian territory. And
Mhm.
remember that there were some actions on Russian territory, and British minister was asked that if he if it's okay by him that Ukrainians are using British arms on Russian territory.
Mhm.
What would be his comments? And he said that what Russians were doing in Ukraine for the last 2 months. Ukrainians are at war with Russians, and it's their right to use any weapons, including British made weapons, on the Russian territory. It's a war between Russia and Ukraine. And as Russia had invaded Ukraine and made enormous damage and human tragedies in Ukraine, so Ukraine has the same rights to do that on Russian territory. That was his answer. Okay, Ivan, please.
Yeah, sorry for the video and probably the audio. I'm in the fields right now, not at home, so I'm using mobile. As for this war, and regarding the last issue, which weapons and which actually ways Ukraine can use to fight back Russia. There is a very good analogy about the situation. Um, Russia is behaving like a big drunk thug who doesn't like his thin pro-European smart neighbor, and he, in the meantime, by being drunk, he decided to fight him under some fantastic reason, actually. And when he gets kicked off back by that thin, smart guy pro-European, it starts to cry, how you can fight me back? I am so big, I'm a thug. How dare you to fight me back? And this is very similar like Russia is behaving now when they're losing their soldiers, when they are having some damage being received from Ukraine after really 2 months of bombing, of shelling, of killing innocent Ukrainians. And I'm totally agree with you that we are here in Ukraine to have all rights to use any means which are available for us to fight Russia back. I mean, any civilized means. Yeah, we will not bomb Russian cities and Russian civilians like they are bombing Ukrainian ones. We have the right to kill their soldiers. We have the right to bomb their military infrastructure. Actually, if we will have some precise weapons, some precise rockets from the Western countries, from the European countries, from the United States, from the Canada, it will allow us to just to fight back for freedom. There is also one important thing to understand what Russia did actually in Ukraine. When they invaded Ukraine in 2014, when they annexed Crimea and invaded the eastern part of Ukraine in Lugansk and Donetsk, they used the casus belli, they were protecting Russian-speaking population there. That Russian-speaking population in Lugansk and Donetsk, they had some problems with the so-called nationalists Ukrainian, with so-called Banderovics, which in opinion of Russian propaganda prohibited them to speak Russian. And when they launched their recent invasion to Ukraine in February, they had the same reason for invading, like protecting the Russian-speaking population of Ukraine, free people of Lugansk and Donetsk region, because they could suffer from Ukrainian nationalists. So, but actually, and another reason which was actually behind the scene, yeah, is not to allow the further more countries to join NATO, not to allow Ukraine to join NATO, but and not to get NATO close to Russian borders. But obviously, they've achieved a completely different goal. Yeah, in Ukraine, a lot of people who were okay with Russia, like who live in the eastern part of Ukraine and who speak Russian language, when Russia bombed their homes, when Russia destroyed their homes, when Russia killed their friends, relatives, neighbors, they flee not to Russia. They flee to the western part of Ukraine. They flee to Kyiv. They flee to European countries, and most of them, which were quite neutral to Russia or supported Russia in some way, they started to hate Russia. A lot of people started to speak Ukrainian. I'm in life regularly. I'm speaking Russian language because I'm from Lugansk, actually. Yeah, though I moved to Kyiv 10 years ago or even more. But now I'm started to speak Ukrainian because I don't want to speak the language of the occupants of the country who treachery invaded my country. And a lot of people started to speak Ukrainian. A lot of people hated Russia. and Sweden and Finland, which were quite neutral countries, they decided to join NATO after they've discovered what Russia did with the Ukraine and what neutral status and understood that neutral status cannot defend their countries from Russia and from their further imperialistic ambitions. So that's Russia achieved completely opposite goals, and this actually is a very big failure of Russia on the international politics arena as well. Not only their failure, which they're achieving in the battlefield, not only their failure in the economic field, yeah, they completely failed in the media war as well, at last in Western countries, when even Marine Le Pen, the candidate for the presidential elections in France, which supported Russia, decided to stay as far from Russia as possible. Or president of Czech Republic, Zeman, who was pro-Russian, but he was one of the first European politicians to tell that Russia should be punished as strong as possible for their war crimes, for the atrocities that they're doing in Ukraine. So I don't know how Russia should behave in the future, but they achieved some goals, yeah. But these are completely opposite goals of that war.
Okay, I've been notified just now that we are broadcasting on United Nations website. That's a great news for our audience, and I hope that very soon United Nations will do much more for a resolution of this conflict or this war. Although I'm
Actually, the last news I've heard about the United Nations, it's that General Assembly of the United Nations adopted the resolution when every veto usage in the Security Council of United Nations will automatically gather the General Assembly of the United Nations. So we'll understand who is using the veto right in the Security Council to cover their war crimes. And actually, what the most funny with the United Nations and Russia is that their invasion started when Russia was head of the Security Council of United Nations. They probably decided to use this period to invade very quickly in order for the United Nations not to have any possibilities to do anything with the Russian invasion because they were heading the Security Council. So I hope that actually it's the last chance for the United Nations to do something with Russia, because when League of Nations was not able to do anything with the Soviet Union invasion to Finland, it actually was at the end of the League of Nations. And if United Nations will not do something with the Russian invasion, then it will be probably the end of the United Nations as well. The world don't need organizations which can't provide the security for the world, actually.
Yeah, I would like to mention how drastically changed the Western attitudes, not only of governments, but even the actual everyday people to Russia. Like before, even after 1914, people were providing some justification. Well, Crimea, that's true, they were formally into Russia, but they're Russian-speaking people. And look, they were referendum, maybe not 100% kosher referendum, but still some referendum, and people want to be in Russia. And, okay, so I don't share this nonsense. However, a lot of people thought that way. However, these days, what's happened after February 24th, from February 24th on, now it's entirely different story. Now, with all this, first of all, unprovoked war, and war which is the one of the sides Russians are using such inhumane tactics that you can't even compare it really to anything known in human history. Although some people already made a comparison, so you're saying that the Soviet army was a good old army, and it's a new Russian army is doing such atrocities in Ukraine. No, if you remember what Russian army did in Germany after it entered in 1945 with all the rapes and stealing of property and art subjects by both Russian general and soldiers and whoever. So this army is no much different from one that doing all this atrocity in Germany. So is that a trace of a Russian army? What do you think? Am I crazy thinking about that way?
No, I think you have a point here, Sasha, because this myth about liberation of Eastern Europe during the Second World War was also one of the fundamental myths of the Soviet and later Russian propaganda. And the atrocities that were committed in Eastern Prussia around Königsberg and during the Russian offensive in Hungary, they were swept under the carpet, but these testimonies were widely published both in the West by brave people or dissidents such as Lev Kopelev, and of course by German and Hungarian historians. And we don't need to go very far. We have to just look at the Soviet tactics in Afghanistan. The official losses of the Soviet army are around 15,000, whereas the losses of Afghan life are about 1 million. And this was the same tactics of scorched earth, where the whole villages were destroyed by the Russian invaders. Going back to what you just said, I think you pointed out a very important change in public attitude towards Russian policy of domination. When in 2007, Putin threatened the West in Munich with using its so-called uh, super natural resource superpower status to confront and assert its dominance over the former Soviet countries and sphere of influence, the West didn't react properly, and we can point several we can determine several bifurcation points here. Of course, the first Chechen War and the second Chechen War uh, that were conducted with the same violation of human rights and complete neglect for the well-being of civilian population didn't elicit any strong reaction in the West. Then, of course, the attack on Georgia in 2008. We now know from the declassified documents that the crucial meeting of the US government, where President Bush and Vice President Cheney both advocated both for sending the actual troops in Georgia to counter Russian, but Condoleezza Rice and several other people prevailed, and it was only a show of force by sending this Galaxy transport to Tbilisi, which still stopped the Russian. And then, of course, the annexation of Crimea and the downing of the Malaysia of the Malaysian airlines flight from Amsterdam, which is a terrible atrocity proven committed by the Russian-backed separatists. This did not elicit any sort of a response that could have stopped Russia in its tracks. So the whole world is paying for it, figuratively, but unfortunately, the Ukrainian people are paying for it literally with their blood and their lives. And this feeling of guilt of everyone of us in the free world is a big driving force now. We are trying to make good on our errors, and we, the populace, are trying to force our elected representatives, our governments, to speed up the help and all kind of military aid to Ukraine. And I'm very, very happy to mention that, in continuing what Ivan just said about the need for heavy weapons, that Canada uh, just delivered to Ukraine the so-called Excalibur uh, smart shells for the howitzers. And of course, we know that all the howitzers that are being delivered to Ukraine now are the NATO standard, 155 millimeters. So all the shells produced in different countries are interchangeable. And actually, as we speak, there is supposedly a Ukraine defense conference hosted by the United States at the Ramstein Air Base, where all these logistics issues are rehashed. But the thing is that, according to our Minister of Defense, Anita Anand, these Excalibur shells, which are named, of course, after the King Arthur's wonderful sword, they have GPS guidance systems. Essentially, they become a mini cruise missiles once fired. So the howitzer fires them, and then they fly and they find the weapons being individually programmed. And their firing range is at least 50 kilometers, whereas the best that the Russian army has is 35 kilometers. So even for us who are not military experts, it's very easy to remember that there is a delimitation line, and with the most the Russian artillery can reach is 35 kilometers back there. So the new NATO howitzers are being deployed further back, and they can still do crucial damage to the Russian attacking line. And today we are celebrating, quote unquote, uh, the ninth day that the supposed terrible and decisive Russian offensive is going on, and nothing but small tactical successes, a village here or a village there, is being done. So the tide has turned. Of course, there is a lot of trouble still ahead. The heroic defenders of Mariupol are still blocked into the Azov steelworks. The civilians are there in the basements dying from the treacherous Russian bombs. There are still some other troubling spots on the map. But please understand that for the last week uh, was the first time in this conflict where both the United States and Britain uh, has publicly stated that their goal is ultimate victory of Ukraine, not to successfully defend the country, not to just uh, confront the offensive as long as possible, but to win ultimately. And when Mr. Wallace, the British minister, was asked what is the definition of victory for him, he clearly said that Russian troops have to be thrown off all the territories that they occupy now, including the certain regions of Donetsk, Luhansk, and the Crimea. And I think this is an earth-shaking pronouncement, and we'll see more development in this way as the time goes on.
It's very important development what you just said, and there is another one: is that finally United States and NATO woke up from this incredible bluff by Putin about nuclear arms and nuclear war and all this bullshit. Finally, they woke up and say, come on, there's no kind of use without heavy incredible punishment for Putin personally and
Mhm.
all Russia. And in fact, what I like is they showed a new compact nuclear warhead. It's a fairly small, it's a tactical warhead, but it has unique ability to go into the deepest bunker and explode right there, including bunker which is in somewhere in Kremlin territory. So now Putin is personally being warned. Here is what's waiting for you, Mr. Putin. Stop your bullshit immediately. So finally, and on the earlier program, I just said there is no such thing as a fear of a nuclear war. It's a complete bullshit because obviously all of us will die one day. It could be car accident, it could be heart attack, it could be just anything, nuclear attack, tactical nuclear attack, or all-out nuclear attack. What makes a difference? It will be just one day when you'll die. Just accept it. And once you do that, you will stop worrying about that. Okay, my dear friends, thank you so much for today's program. And I hope we'll continue on Friday with really, really good news. I'm really checking internet and all sources 24 hours a day to find finally a really, really, really good news. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Goodbye.
Bye
Thank you.
bye.